In this video, I'm going to look at using Mocha and After Effects to create a motion tracked object, and we're going to use Mocha to do the masking that is going to allow us, in this case, to see the moon behind the kind of tower part of the building there. So the tracking is done in After Effects. It's just a straightforward single point track, taking that part of the building there, just the corner of that little piece of brickwork, and that is then applied to moon JPEG, which is just a JPEG of the moon with a soft feathered mask on it, and that has been offset using its anchor point property to sit up there at the top of the image, and it's tracked in. So before any masking is done, it just basically looks like that. Now it has also been set to screen so that it kind of blends with the sky. So the moon is just kind of sitting there getting tracked in using our motion tracking in After Effects. The object that is masking it off is obviously the top of the tower here, and that was tracked in Mocha, and then the mask was reapplied back here in After Effects. So we'll just pop into Mocha just so you can see the part of the process where the mask was created. Beg your pardon, I've just gone in the wrong place there. There we go. Okay, so we can see that we have a mask there called no, that should in fact be called moon mask, not mood mask. So I'll change that. So moon mask is a Bezier shape, or a B-spline as it's referred to in Mocha, and it's just been drawn around that object, only in the part of the frame where I need it to be, so that it kind of masks out the moon. Be no point in continuing that B-spline down there because the moon is only visible here. Now up here we'll see moon mask, and it's currently the only visible layer, so it's the only shape we can see. But there are other there's another one here called track roof, and that is switched off at the moment. When I switch that on, you'll see that that is actually just a rough X-spline, and that is doing the tracking. So even though the object being masked out is up here, the object that is doing the planar tracking is down here. So essentially what is done here is the shape is tracking that very distinct set of corners and shapes and patterns and things in there, and that cog indicates that some processing has been done, in this case that it is actually a tracked shape. The moon mask is in fact not doing any motion tracking, even though it's moving, but it has been parented, or in Mocha terms linked, to the shape that is doing the track. And you'll see that down here, link to track roof. Okay, so that's the basic workflow that I'm going to go through. I'm going to start motion tracking, or planar tracking rather, to here, and then creating shapes, linking them and sending them back to After Effects. So what I'll do is I'll close this, I'll save it for now, and I'm going to create a duplicate version of this project just so I can start from scratch. And this is building tilt up, so I'll duplicate that and open that up and just get rid of everything basically. I'll leave the moon there and switch it off, and I will deselect delete rather my Mocha effect on my backdrop. So I'm starting from scratch with just a raw layer of my building, and the first thing I need to do to kick off any kind of a tracking in Mocha is to go up to animation and down to track in Boris FX Mocha. So once that's in there, I click on the logo to open Mocha, and I'll probably get oh, not this time. Usually you get a load of kind of welcome screens and stuff that you can click through. In this case I must have said do not show again, so here we go. Now, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to find something to track so that I can follow the movement of the frame before I start drawing any detailed masks. So I'm going to click or hold down Z, click and drag up to zoom in, and hold down X and click and drag to move that around. So there's two types of shapes I can use in Mocha. There's X splines and B splines, and generally speaking, what you do when you're planar tracking is you create a rough shape, not a very detailed shape, and the X spline is perfect for that. Okay, so if I just draw that and then right click to close it off, and then I can click those and move them around just to define a shape fairly loosely with enough detail in it that it'll be able to find all of these various things frame by frame. Okay. Now, X splines can also be used for more detailed work as well, which I'll look at in a different video. You can draw quite detailed shapes with X splines as well. In this case, I'm just going to use the X spline to create my shape to do the planar tracking, and I'm going to use a B spline up here to draw around that part of the building momentarily. So I'll double click that just to give it a name, track building. And I will, no, in fact, I should have gone to the very last frame there. Doesn't really matter. Let's get rid of all my keyframes. And I want to start tracking. In this case, just because I was at the end of the clip when I drew the mask, I'll track backwards. Now I'll flip back into Essentials because this is probably the view that you can see when you're in just taking your first trip out of After Effects into Mocha. And I'm going to put on perspective as well, just to make sure that in case there is a perspective change in that building front, that it's going to follow it when it tracks. And I'll track backwards and I'll let that do its thing. Okay, so that has stopped tracking, and I can pull the playhead back and forth and see that it has tracked that fairly well. Now, a very handy tool in Mocha to evaluate whether or not your shape is tracking properly to the thing that you wanted to follow is to go up to View and Stabilize, and then you can zoom in and center that mask in the middle of the frame, and it will allow you to keep the mask always stabilized in the center of your view while you watch the track unfold. So this is actually tracking, but because the mask is always centered in my frame, I can actually keep it exactly where I want it, so I can see if there's anything slipping off here or here or so on. So I can see with Stabilize on that it is pretty good, albeit it'll probably lose it right at the end there, yeah, because it just doesn't have enough of the plane left to work with. Okay, so that's the first step. We've tracked the frontage here on the building, and now we have something that stores the data that we need to create additional masks for us to use elsewhere. Now at this point you can, if you wish, switch on your planar surface, and what that does is it gives you a reference shape. Now this actually has a few different purposes. It can be used to send a corner pin back to After Effects to use with the corner pin effect, or you can use it to check the alignment of things in your frame to see if your track is going to be suitable for you to create masks and such on parts of the frame, such as the rooftop here. So again, if I keep that in stabilize mode and I move that back and forth, I can see that because the planar shape is representing the tracking data from my shape here, and because I can see that it's not moving at all when I pull the playhead backwards and forwards, that if I create another mask to, for instance, track or mask off the edge of that building, then that will be fine, it will hold. I could do similar things up here. I can kind of check to see, does my building kind of stay where I want it to be, just as a rough guide. And yes, you can see that also holds, but you would probably find that if you went too far from the object, you know, it wouldn't hold up quite as well because you're too far from the actual track itself, and it would start to wobble and shift, and you can see that there. So it's a great tool to use just to check the edges of things to make sure things are still following based on the object that you want to mask off. So I'll switch that off and I'll zoom back in now, and I'll just go to a point where I can see all of my rooftop, and I am going to now create a second shape, this time with the B-spline tool, and I'm going to take as much of the corner of this part of the building in as I can and with as much detail as I can. So I'm going to get my B-spline tool and basically just start drawing. Now I'm zoomed right in here, so I'm just kind of seeing pixels, but I should get enough detail to kind of trick the eye back in After Effects. No, that should be enough. Okay, and that's closed off the shape, and you can see because I get my transform bounding box there around it. Now, so I have the shape drawn, but that's not currently going to do anything for me. You'll see it's just static sitting there on the building on one frame. So I select the layer, I go down to link to track, and I track that to track building. I'm also going to change the name to outline roof, we'll call it. Probably a better name for that, but we'll just call it roof for now. And that should now track. You can see it does. I'll switch off my stabilizing so you can see it a little bit more as it will look in the final shot. You can see that it is tracking that fairly nicely there. Okay. Now don't forget that at any point you can come back out and tweak this after you've been into After Effects. If it's not working, you come back out to Mocha, you tweak it, you save it, you go back in, you generate the mask again, and you can do that as many times as you need. For now, I'm just going to save this, and back in After Effects, I'm going to go through the process of applying that to in such a way that it's going to mask off the moon.jpg. Now remember, the moon is just tracked in using a motion tracking effect, so I don't need to do that now because that's covered in other videos. But I do need to sort this area out here so it's not in front of the building. So the Mocha effect is applied currently to the background plate, and all of the masks that I can generate by default will just be applied to this layer. So if I were to go into matte, for example, and check visible layers to only switch on outline roof, so I'll switch off track building because I don't want to use that as a matte, click OK, and then view matte. You'll see that it gives me the matte, alright, but again, I don't want that to be applied to this layer because then that will happen, you know, and obviously that's not what I'm looking for. I need the mask data to be applied to the moon. Now, I could also just create the masks using create AE masks, and then copy and paste from this layer to the moon.jpg or something like that, and then delete the masks, but that's a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the Mocha AE mask, and I'm going to copy, Command C, and I'm going to create a solid that's going to be used as a track matte for the moon, and click OK. I can switch it off because I don't need to look at it, and I'm going to paste the effect onto that solid. Now, sorry, I just switched that off because that's from the previous version. And I'm also going to, hit return here and call this matte moon, just so that if I need to bring in other matte Mocha effects and apply them in the similar way that I can for different parts of the video, then I can, you know, have multiple names on multiple Mocha effects. But for now, I'm just going to have matte moon, and I'm going to go to matte, and I'm going to go create AE masks, because I have already changed the visible layers to only show outline roof, and the shape is going to be applied based on only all of the visible layers that are currently in that. Feathering I would prefer to do afterwards. Inverting, all of that I do on the mask once it's been created. So I'm going to hit create AE masks, and that is now applied onto our track matte solid. Okay, so it's just masked the solid because the track matte, as you know, is set on the layer directly beneath, in this case moon. So I'm going to hit alpha matte, track matte moon, and that is now going to apply to the moon. So it's working. I can see that's pretty accurate. There's a tiny bit of slippage on the moon actually, but I'd have to go back and fix that elsewhere. So I'll just zoom in here on the moon, and you can see here it's okay. It's an accurate enough shape, but it looks a little bit odd. It looks like I've kind of cut too far out in this direction. So that's why you can go back into the mask then, and you can do things like hit your mask expansion, maybe give it a 1 pixel expansion, and or see if we can go for a 0.5 or something like that, and maybe soften it with a 1 pixel feather or something like that. And you can see now that actually blends a little bit better. It looks a little bit more pixelated, like the pixelation in the video, so it kind of looks more integrated basically. And that completes the effect. So it's a very common approach to take. You do your motion tracking in After Effects, and then you do your masking in Mocha, and then send the masks back in and use a track matte to apply the masks to the object here in After Effects.